So I just wonder if we've reached a point where these contracts are so big that, players are okay. They like, holy crap, you're giving me 15, $20 million a year, $25 million a year. Like, yeah, I'm just going to take that. I don't need to gamble. All right, so let's go into what's next, basically, because we've now seen a number of guys sign extensions who aren't in that obvious, max. Like Kevin Durant signs an extension. Of course he does. The Nets would pay him twice as much if they could. But now, seeing Smart, seeing Richardson, seeing Rozier, seeing Time Lord, that's more surprising. We don't typically see this volume of non-max veteran extensions in one offseason.
Right.
So do you think this is a trend or is this just a one-off? Do you think are these guys looking at what happened to Dennis Schroder and to Richaun Holmes? Maybe all these Boston guys have one phone call with Dennis Schroder and he's like, take the damn money. And then, that's why they locked up all their guys. Or do you think this is just like a weird year and, come 2023, we're going to see a robust free agent class again?
I think the allure of being chased has worn off. I remember back 20 years ago where NBA stars would almost be excited about someone come knocking at their door at midnight. Like, who is it? Who's the team chasing me? And like sometimes you had stories about several teams showing up at the same address at the same time, making everything super awkward. And there was this whole ideology that players love to be chased. They love to be the attraction of teams. I think that moment has passed. I think now we're in a situation where players just don't care. They know that if they're good enough, they can go wherever the hell they want to. And that they don't need certain teams to chase them. Like, for example, if you're a Paul George and you say, I want to get out of the Los Angeles Clippers and I want to go specifically to, let's say, Memphis, for example. Like, are you going to tell me that he's not going to get his wish? I don't think so. He's going to get his wish somehow, some way, because then he'll just tell everyone else, yeah, you can trade for me, but I won't report. I won't do this. I won't do that. I'll speak out in the media. Like, I'm just going to force my way to Memphis if that's what I want. And I think we're seeing that with contracts now, where teams or players are basically saying, you know what, screw all that. We just want to sign for some guaranteed money. We want to lock some things up. And if we want to move on, we can just make it happen. It's a phone call away from my agent. I'm going to call up my agent and I'm going to say, I know that I have 3 years left. Don't care. Get me out of Dodge. So I think that's the new mentality. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm wondering if the money now is just so high that players, Terry Rozier are getting $97 million. Like, at a certain point, sure, you could bet on yourself. You could try to make even more money, but like that's going to set not only you up, not only your children up, your grandchildren, that could support your entire community. Like that's your entire extended family. Like that is generational wealth.
Yeah.
So I just wonder if we've reached a point where these contracts are so big that, players are okay. They like, holy crap, you're giving me $20 million a year, $25 million a year. Like, yeah, I'm just going to take that. I don't need to gamble and, milk out every single last drop of my earning potential. Like, $100 million is cool with me. I'm good.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know.
I think you're right. I mean, I think for some guys, it's not. Like you alluded to it, like for example, Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, those type of guys. Like they are going to want the max next year. Does Beal have an option for next year? So he could be looking at, right? Yeah. Okay. So he could opt out next year. Yeah. So they're going to be looking at that. They want the full Monty, so to speak. And I get that. But for the mid-tier guys, the ones who aren't full-fledged max contract players, they get offered, money that are, like you said, generational. Yeah, you lock that up immediately. Like, for example, Terry Rozier, if he goes down with an injury, and knock on wood that doesn't happen, but fortunately now he's got his contract. He's not a player the NBA would necessarily pick up, if you catch my drift. Like, if he goes down with a horrific injury, teams will be, all right, Ontario sure was a good player, but we're not willing to make the investment like the Nets did with Kevin Durant. Like, he doesn't have the name recognition. He doesn't have the star quality. Like, we'll have to see some other team pick him up, and he'll have to prove that he can play at an NBA level again before we're even remotely interested again. So for those guys, there's a greater risk. The max guys, like, they're going to get their money regardless of what kind of injury. Like, look, LeBron James could fall over tomorrow and break into half, and the Lakers would still give him every single dollar that they could afford to. And that's just what it is. So yeah, for the non-max guys, it's absolutely something that they are prioritizing. I would be shocked otherwise. I mean, get the bag, lock it up, and then you can go from there. It's just a smart play. It's also why I'm kind of curious as to that mentality. You actually brought it up a little bit earlier, Bryan. That whole, betting on yourself in restricted free agency. Like, so Lauri Markkanen, you brought him up as well. Let's take him as an example, right? He wanted 19. The Bulls offered 15 before the start of his 4th season.
Oof.
How much do you think that he wants to go back and accept that deal right now?
Yeah, or Schroder. Right? I mean, he turns down 4 years, $84 million.
Yeah, $484.
And settles for 1 year, 5.9. Like,
right, but Schroder wasn't a restricted free agent, though.
No, yeah.
So I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying, like, even because he had his first big hit. Like, he was still earning a significant portion of money before that. And I'm not saying the rookies are poor because they're still earning millions and millions of dollars, but there's a difference. Like, Lauri Markkanen has not had what you call his first big hit yet, like his secondary contract. And now it appears as though that second hit is going to be substantially lower than what he could have had if he didn't pass up the extension. And as we know with the NBA, if you're kind of stuck in a certain mindset, your value is not going to increase from there. So his third hit, when that arrives, is probably not going to be all that great. Meaning that Markkanen is going to cost himself, at the end of the day, just a shitload of money, to put it bluntly.
Yeah, I mean, for every John Collins, he turns down 4 years, $90 million before the start of last season, ends up getting 5 year, $125.
I still don't agree with that, but yeah.
Yeah, but there's a market or like Nerlens Noel, who turned down 4 years, $70 million from the Mavericks a couple years ago.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too.
He had to settle for minimum contracts for a couple years in a row before finally he gets 3 years, 27 this year. But even that has a team option at the end. So, it's basically a 2 year, $18 million contract, effectively.
Yeah.
But I mean, he had to settle for, I think he did the qualifying offer, I want to say, from the Mavericks, and then two minimum deals with the Thunder, I believe. And then finally gets $5 million last year with the Knicks, and then
I don't remember if he ever took the qualifying offer. He could have been. He could have. Yeah. But I mean,
I think.
But that's the issue, right? Like, that's the issue. Like, with guys waiting. Like, why not just take the money? I mean, I understand you're kind of hoping that, oh, well, you know what? I've been in the league for 3 years. Maybe in year 4, that's when I become LeBron James. Like, no, right. You're not. If you've been in the league for 3 years, you've played consistent minutes, and you've had a consistent role, and you haven't turned into LeBron James or anything that remotely sniffs a max caliber performance, like you're not hitting that unless you're Jimmy Butler. Like, you're not getting to that level. Like, the Jimmy Butlers aren't the blueprint here. Those are the exceptions to the rule. Like, sure, you might have to negotiate a little bit harder. Like, for Markkanen, instead of saying I want 19 and the Bulls offering 15, like, okay, see if you can hedge your bet a little bit. Go 17. There you go. What's that over 4 years? 17, 44. That's $68 million over 4 years, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of money. That's also generational wealth. Like, just take the bag. Figure it out afterwards. Take it. It's so much easier.
Well, so here you brought up like the middle tier, like which just is getting thinner and thinner and thinner every year. There's the max guys, there's the MLE guys, and then there's that middle group. Let's say between 15 and 20 million. Here is the full list of guys who got contracts worth an average of 15 and 20 million dollars in free agency this year. It is not long.
All right.
It is Tim Hardaway Jr.,
right?
Evan Fournier, Norman Powell, Spencer Dinwiddie, Duncan Robinson, Gary Trent Jr. That's it. 6 guys.
Wow.
So if if you aren't a clear-cut max guy and you want to be in this middle tier, say I'm eyeing 20 to 25 million per year, which is apparently what Schroder was as well. Those contracts just don't exist anymore. Right. Not in high volume. I mean, Jared Allen got 20 million, Lonzo got 20 million, John Collins gets 25, Mike Conley got 23 almost. Other than that, like it was Derrick Rose at 14.5, Doug McDermott at 14, Josh Hart again on the fake 3-year, 38 million, Kelly Oubre 2 years, 25. Like a guy like Kelly Oubre a couple years ago probably was in that same camp where he thought, oh, I'm gonna hit free agency. I'm gonna get 20, 25 million a year easily. Now he's getting 25 over 2 in the second year isn't fully guaranteed.
Right.
So I do wonder if we've reached a point now where the monetary figures are so big that you have to just see how teams are building right now. Like most teams are just following 2 or 3 max guys at the top, MLE or below after that, like a stars and scrubs roster construction. And that's a fantasy term. I'm not saying every other player who isn't a max is a scrub, but like you're just devoting so much of your salary cap to your top 2 or 3 guys that you just don't have a ton of money left over for these middle tier contracts. And, you get squeezed out if you are in that tier of player. But, going back to Boston for a second, as you said, like all of these contracts that they have now, as teams don't have as many of these middle tier contracts, like the teams that do are going to be the most popular potential trade destinations because now you have the salaries to play around and cobble together. Like Indiana has a bunch of those guys in that 15 to 20 million range. Like you could put together a couple contracts for superstars or mess around and get involved in 3-team deals to help grease some wheels elsewhere. So yeah, I mean I agree with what you said earlier about Rozier in particular. Like getting him signed to that deal with that length theoretically increases his trade value, even if it might have been a slight overpay for him just based on his value versus production right now.
Overpay right now, because that's the thing, right? As the cap increases, overpay becomes a relative term.
Yeah.
Well, so let's kind of stick with this, even though we're going into a little bit of a new segment here, because I want to bring this up, and I think it's so related to what we're talking about. I want to go back and talk about Isaiah Thomas. Not the Detroit Pistons version, but the Boston Celtics version. Yeah. Like that's a guy who, if memory serves, so you might help me out here.
Okay.
He was eligible for extension, right? But he just stuck with his contract because he wanted to get the full Brink truck or whatever he called it.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact. I remember the Brinks truck.
Right.
Where, I mean, he was in line for,
100 plus
million. Yeah, easily.
Yeah. So I have the numbers here. He was at 7.2. He was on a declining deal. 7.2 million, 6.9, 6.5, then 6.2, and his final year was on that contract was with the Lakers. So I believe that he got traded, on his last year before free agency, because the Boston Celtics kind of realized, this hip is really problematic.
Well, they traded him to Cleveland first, and then
correct. Who then traded? Yeah. But I'm saying that last season was 2017, 2018.
Yep.
And that's when he was on his last high paid. I'm putting that in quotation marks. Salary year, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have a couple things about this. First and foremost, I'm fairly sure that after year 3 of that, which was the last one there, he was eligible for an extension. And I'm fairly sure, even though that the Boston Celtics knew that hip could have been an issue, that they would have been open to taking on him on a new contract, even if it had it had been a pay increase of the contract he was on, but not necessarily 100 million. Like the reason they moved him was they saw, all right, he's never going to be that max tier guy. But would they have accepted a return for him if he was willing to take like 14 million a year?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an interesting discussion to have, because if they were, he probably wouldn't have been moved. But he kind of said all the while, like, no, I want the whole enchilada. Like, I want the big thing. I want everything, knowing full well that there was a significant hip injury in place. So I'm of two minds here. Like, what should happen in that scenario? Should the Celtics just go, no, let's hash it out. Like, you deserve a raise because you clearly outproduce your salary, and we're willing to give you like 14 million a year, maybe 15 million a year, but we can't go to like 25, 26 that you want because that hip is an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, what should have been the play here? That's kind of what I'm wondering. Should they gone that route, or did they just do flat out the right thing by saying, nah, we can see the writing on the wall here. Like, your hip is not getting better. There's absolutely no reason for us to invest $100 million into you, knowing full well that hip is an issue. Because I'm seeing a lot of these things where Boston is still suffering from like the perception of what happened. Like Anthony Davis's father, I believe it was like, nope, after that happened with IT, Davis is just not coming to Boston. So in your opinion, what should have been, like, who did IT wrong, or did anyone do IT wrong? That's kind of what I want to ask, because I don't think anyone did IT wrong.
I would have to go back and look at the specifics, because I don't remember if the Celtics had cap space that offseason. I think they did, right? Because that's the year they got Horford.
So they traded him in 17, right?
Yes, yeah. I believe so.
Let's see.
Yeah.
They traded him.
Oh, so maybe they got Horford the year before.
They traded him on August 30th, 17.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did they get Horford? They got Horford the year before, didn't they? Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so they wouldn't have had a lot of cap space.
I mean, my question, I'm asking that because I think potentially the one who did him wrong was the NBA and the NBA Players Union for agreeing to a CBA that has a very restrictive rule on extensions. Like, if they didn't have cap space, which, we talked about, the Bulls could have like renegotiated and extended Zach LaVine in the summer if they had cap space. So if they had cap space and that was an option, that's one thing. If they didn't, they were limited to either 120% of his current salary, which was, $7 million a year, or 120% of the average salary. And I don't know what the average salary was offhand for that season, but probably not much more than that. So
it wouldn't have been 175%.
That's an early bird.
Yeah, but he was on a contract for at least 2 years.
Yeah, before. It's just, the salary. I have Kuhn's FAQ pulled up because I knew we'd be talking about. Yeah, so it's the salary in the first year of a veteran extension may be any amount up to 120% of the player's previous salary, or 120% of the estimated average salary. So either way, he's not making more than 10 million a year, and of course he's going to turn that down. He just might not have had the option to sign the extension that he deserved. Maybe the Celtics weren't going to give him a max deal, but maybe they would have been open to giving him 20 million more, or whatever. Yeah. So He
not 20 not have, with that hip.
right. But fine. Like, maybe they would have done 5 years, 75. Who knows? But I wonder if he even had the option of doing so, or
they could have made that happen though, right?
If they created cap space to do it.
But I don't remember if they were that locked up. Like, they didn't have a whole lot of players.
I don't remember either. It looks like I have an article pulled up from Chris Forsberg, then of ESPN. This is from May of 2017. He says he's happy that, he's fine if they wanted to bring in free agents over prioritize an extension for him. So it seems like they might have had cap space. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's when they got Hayward, right?
Yes.
2017 is when they got Hayward. Yeah. So that
is true.
They could have, They could have gotten him. They could have extended Isaiah, but instead they spent their cap space on Hayward.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, even if they dug into it a little bit, I'm not saying much. I'm saying like 15 million a year. I'm not even going to the 20 mark.
Mm-hmm.
That would still have been such an uptick over what he was earning first and foremost. And I realized that, he wasn't taking that because I just came off a year averaging 29 per game. Like, I get that. But at the same time, you as a player, you like have to understand that if there's a hip injury in place, surely you would recognize that's going to limit your value. Like, there's a reason he's been bouncing around the league ever since. No one has been willing to take on a long-term, commitment with him at any point. And yet we're seeing all these videos come out like the league gave up on me. Like, did they? Did they really? Or was it just because that you have a hip injury that just really prevents teams from going all out and giving you that brink truck that you want?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the case. Clearly, it's unfortunate that the timing is unfortunate. I feel like of all of the cautionary contract tales from the past 10 years or so, the guys that we'll think back on the most are DeMarcus Cousins and Isaiah Thomas.
Yeah.
Because both guys...
Boogie got his bag once, right?
Yeah, but he was up for another... I mean, he was up for the Supermax, and then they...
Oh, that's true.
Pelicans.
Yeah.
So, he did not get his... that big third contract that he seemed... as a multi-time All-Star, seemed like he was well in line for. And then IT as well, has a massive 29 points per game season. Seems like he's going to get just paid out the wazoo, and then just falls off a cliff after that. So,
and that's the thing, because they traded him after that season, they knew. Yeah. But I'm just saying, if the Celtics had and I don't want to rule out that the Celtics had been open to bringing him back, but let's say we go with the 120%, right? This is kind of what I'm alluding to with players right now. Sign if you're right there. Yeah, Isaiah Thomas, you wouldn't get the max because you have a hip injury. So kick it back with your team, figure it out, and go. Look, we're not going to hit anything on the open market. Teams are just too scared of a hip injury. The Celtics are offering 120% of the $6.2 million I was earning. That's still more than I was earning before. And if that's a 4-year contract, why the hell not?
Yeah, I mean, and that's where, again, it comes back to, is the money now so good that, with Isaiah Thomas being on a $7 million a year contract, if you're going 120% of that, I could understand why he would say, even if I'm not getting maxed, I'm at least getting more than that on the free agent market, without obviously knowing how bad his hip was going to be. Right. But now there are guys, if you're on a $10, $15 million contract and you can get 120% of that, just take that. That is a lot of money now. I think this is going to raise the floor for some guys and perhaps make extensions more of a realistic prospect, because guys now see that mid-tier just doesn't really exist outside of a few very limited circumstances.
All I'm saying is this year from the New Orleans Pelicans, he earned $159,000.
For only 3 games of work, not bad.
Right. No, but compared to what he could have had, man, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love for that to be my annual salary. That's right. But I'm just saying that I think you raised the point of the money being so large now that now's the time. I think if you're a player who's putting up huge stats, but there are super injury concerns around you, but you still maybe have some options, take them, because the league will absolutely pivot on to someone more healthy.